Hi everyone, welcome back to GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the Wednesday 4 o'clock show this afternoon. We'd like to thank Dr. Stephen Salloway with Smart Health and the Warren Alpert Medical School at Brown University. We'd like to welcome a familiar face, Ed Iannuccilli
Good to see you.
of Ed
Thank
Wrights.
you. Nice to be here.
But of course, before Ed Wrights had the hat as the chair of the board at Rhode Island Hospital. Very intriguing conversation with Dr. Salloway here. And in the global health news, the recent news that Partners is essentially pulled out of looking at coming here into Rhode Island, Care New England, and Lifespan now looking at a Rhode Island solution, if you will. You have been intimately involved in the healthcare system here in Rhode Island. And before we talk about your fun family history that you write all about, really do want to pick your brain as to what you think is in Rhode Island's best interest now that there's this potential again for this, what they're calling Rhode Island solution.
Well, it's in the best interests of the citizens of Rhode Island and the patients in Rhode Island, Kate. And it's an opportunity to put two medical centers together, Lifespan and Care New England, and along with the medical school. And if they came together in a partnership, the delivery of health care in terms of actual delivery, patient care, and research dollars coming into the state would be not infinite, but it would be huge. And it would be the best thing, I believe, for the citizens of Rhode Island.
Well, it was incredibly intriguing to hear what Dr. Stephen Salloway had to say about the advancements and the research taking place at Brown University here with Alzheimer's, because, you know, talking about what's in the best interest of the state, the advantage of Rhode Island having a small population oftentimes is being able to encapsulate looking at that population as you're looking to make advances.
Yes, absolutely. And the data, the ability to collect data in a small population in Rhode Island and analyze that data and report that data would be invaluable for clinical research, bench research, and patient care eventually. It would be great. It would be excellent.
So I want to talk about a few of your recent columns and what we can expect moving forward. And I just want to say, first and foremost, very impressed. Just came back from a West Coast swing of 4 graduations.
4 graduations. Still awake.
And family is so much of a thread throughout what you write that so many people relate to, and it's always great to see when people interact with stories that you've written. And we've talked a little bit about, you know, what inspires you, how you kind of take that pen to the paper, and sometimes, as you said, looking at a photograph and writing the story. But there's clearly stories that stand out in your mind that have stood the test of time. Flunking the draft test, you guess. So, you know, one of the preeminent minds here in Rhode Island was faced with a situation in which you didn't maybe have the answers.
Yeah, I was an intern at Rhode Island Hospital, and I got a draft notice, and I reported to the draft board, which was at Fields Point in Rhode Island, and took the physical while I kept telling them I'm not eligible for the draft because I'm still in training and I'm exempt. And they said, no, do this. Take this test. So I sat down, and it said at the top of the exam paper, number of years of schooling. 21, I had to add them up. And then they showed me a test with carburetors and distributors and spark plugs, none of which I had ever seen, knew anything about. This guy's answering all the questions. This guy's answering. The sergeant came over and said, 21 years of schooling. You can't. I said, I'm a doctor. He said, get out of here. Go back to the hospital.
And that's a story I'm sure you've told many a time. And how funny is that? Because it just goes to show the different levels of intellect. There's people who could put the carburetors together. You put that in front of me, I've certainly got no clue how to do it.
Yeah, so here's the thing, Kate. To me, at the end of the story, I was going back to the hospital, and as I was doing that, I was thinking, where are those guys who answered the question going? And they were going to Vietnam. And I was staying here, so I was lucky to flunk, I guess.
And you tell a couple of stories, bullied you guess, involving a peak coat and a lovely gal that you actually wanted to be friends with.
Yeah, well, I thought there was the days I got bullied by a couple of guys in the schoolyard, but one day coming out of school, this lady said to me, come here, kid, grabbed me by the pea coat, threw my toque in a tree, and scared the death out of me and forced me to run home without my toque. That was bullying, I think it was.
Do you think, I mean, there's so much attention to it paid these days of bullying. Do you think we've here we are as a society in 2019. I mean, folks like to say, kids will be kids, or human nature is what it is. But what do you think that, all this attention's paid to it? Do you think it's had an impact?
I hope it's had an impact. I think it has. I see now that somebody wants to find parents who don't do something about the bullying that may happen with their children. It really has to stop, because what I think has taken it to an unfortunate level is the social media piece of it.
Yep.
And the concern that kids have when they're bullied, that everybody knows about who I am, what I am, inappropriately perhaps, and that really frightens me. And that's why really we need to pay close attention to that. I hope it's changing. At least it's being written about enough, and let's hope it makes a difference.
Well, we did write an article in GoLocal at Broken that there was an arrest following a lacrosse game on which a parent went over and had an actual physical altercation with the coach. They've now been banned by the Rhode Island Interscholastic League.
That's right.
So much, are there teaching moments?
I hope so. I had a friend who played Little League baseball nearby, and the parents were banned from all the games because the bullying took place from the stands and in the stands and with. I'll tell you one story. Can I tell you one story?
Oh, please.
Okay, so my son was pitching a Little League baseball game, and usually I sat back and said nothing, and he threw 2 strikes to the batter, and I said to him, "Waste a pitch, Chris." He stood off the mound and he said, "Dad, I don't know how to do that." That's the last time. I was so mortified that I never said another thing.
Speaking of family, peepers and mayflies, you had some lovely childhood memories from the Berkshires.
Yeah. Well, no, that's current. That's not childhood.
Okay.
That's a place we have now in the Berkshires, sitting in a bucolic area on a beautiful 100-acre pond. With our house right on the pond, little cabin that we have, and we're fortunate to see it at all times of year because we go up there throughout the year, Kate, and we're able to see not only the changing of the seasons, but also the animals, and listen to the sounds and watch the birds and identify birds, and it's a great place to relax, which is necessary for everybody, I believe.
And so, as you get out and about, both on social media and on the street, and talk with folks about your writing, how much are you hearing from folks that you've inspired them to tell their story to?
Well, I have, that's interesting, because I think the message I try to give people is write your story. It's very important. Even if no one reads it but you and maybe your children or your grandchildren, write the story, because if it's not written, it's lost forever. So I get a lot of calls, "Doc, how did you write the story?" "Doc, I have a book. Tell me how to publish it." I said, well, the key to it is to write it. Take a pad with you. Take a book with you. Write down the thoughts that you have of your childhood, of your current day, of your observations, because if not, they're lost forever. And it makes you, it leaves your legacy. I believe it's a very important thing to do, and I try to convince people and encourage them to do it. And you don't have to, by the way, if you just sit down and write 3 pages a day, don't look at it for 6 months, just keep writing, whether you punctuate it or not.
And one of the things that's so great about your writing, you talk about telling your story, and oftentimes it's everyone's story. It's that universal nature of growing up in a small state together that it really resonates so much with the readers. I mean, we've talked about this. Are you, again, the feedback is enormous because it taps into that psyche of folks who are like, "Oh, I forgot about that," or "Oh, I remember that," or "I knew that area." How much do you enjoy that part of it?
I love it. Because this is the best part of the writing, is the people that I've met, the stories that I've heard from them. I'll tell you one story. I wrote one about how my mother was a kleptomaniac, how when she went to restaurants or hotels, she'd put all the jellies in her bag and the sugar and the whatever, and so many people said, my mother was a kleptomaniac. My grandmother was a kleptomaniac. In fact, my mother took the bread off the table and forgot it in her purse for a week, and it's all moldy.
And everyone thinks, "Oh, mate, was it just my mom?" And then you come to find out it was everyone's
everybody's mother and grandmother. And I love that part of it, Kate. I love to rekindle the stories that people have, their memories, because most of the things that I think I rekindle are good things. Not everything is good in a memoir. You know, people sometimes say misery loves memoir, but in my case, I've been very fortunate. And I hear from people who say to me, you wrote my story. I love that. I love that when they tell me that.
And of course, if you want to read more from Ed, read on GoLocalProv.com. And of course, you can sign up for Ed Writes as well.
Yeah.
And as always, appreciate your stopping in monthly because,
Love
I said, one of the most popular features on GoLocalProv.com is the weekly column by Ed Iannuccilli with Ed Writes. So, Doctor,
Love it.
thank you for coming in today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And thank you for spending some of your afternoon here, as most of you might be awaiting the final game of the Stanley Cup final this evening.
Oh, I'll be there.
So be sure to check into GoLocalProv.com and find us on Facebook throughout the evening and the morning. We look forward to seeing you. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.